Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Teaching Writing in College, where the driving question is, how can instructors in higher education leverage theory, science, pedagogy, and craft most effectively to help their learners with writing? Very glad to have you along, and I've got some good things in store for today, I think, regarding AI. This is episode 29. And what it's about is inviting students to reflect on genAI. It's part of the summer reflection series I've been doing. This is episode 5 of that summer reflection series. And some of the things that we've done have kind of been leading up to this. So we explored the limitations of AI a little bit in writing. I thought about this idea of Looper, a framework for teaching in the context of AI with a focus on student learning. So it's learn, use, practice, and reflect. And I've been thinking about that. I'm trying to decide whether I will keep it or if maybe I have a student-facing version or something like that. That may evolve a bit, but those things are really important. Learn, use, practice, and reflect on the tools about writing. That's really important. Review, launch, deliver, apply, and close. Once again, an important part of just teaching in the classroom, having something that students can follow. Teachers as accomplished novices, we have expertise because we're teachers and we studied hard to learn a lot of things. And in some ways, we are also novices because we're still learning new things as we go. And so I like this idea of accomplished novices for teachers as well as students. But some of the things we've been doing are right there. But I've also been thinking about this need for explicit reflection on AI, on genAI, on our part, of course, and also on the part of students, because there's kind of a mandate to learn how to use AI, and so that's really important that they also reflect on it. And we're thinking about it pretty hard in higher education. I'm kind of seeing things moving here at my own university, Grand Canyon University, but I'm also kind of seeing it around the country. And a few weeks ago, I was on Facebook, and I in this part of this group called Higher Ed Learning Collective. I like to hear from folks, and they bring up stuff about AI from time to time as well, as you might imagine. But here's one from Axel Mark Oaks Takax, who I hope I said the last name right there, Axel. I'm sorry if I didn't, but I think I did. But here's what he says. He brings up this concern that I think is really important, and it has some layers to it. And so it really kind of got me thinking in some new directions about what I might want to do in my classroom with students vis-a-vis AI. So I'm just going to go ahead and read his post, and then I have a few comments about it, kind of the direction he's taking, which I think is really important. So here's what it says. Many of my colleagues near and far have been sharing their frustrations with AI in the classroom, and much of this lament increased during last semester and into the summer. Abandoning our euphemistic circumlocutions for what we think it is doing to students, some of us finally decided it is just making students miss out on learning, full stop. So my question is, are any of you addressing this in novel ways, not in the assessments, assignments, and so forth in the syllabus to prevent or integrate or just deal with AI? For my part, I've given up. It is all in-class Blue Book exams moving forward, but something up front on the first day, a reading, a video, a podcast, a grandiose Jeremiad followed by sincere counsel on their future inability to think, write, and communicate. So he's got that in parentheses. Inability is in parentheses, and then ability, so it could go either way. Something else, basically something that gets the students to think a bit about their use of AI and whether it is an unqualified good or not. I would be grateful for your comments on your ideas, reading list, or anything else. I am not sure if I will do anything special on the first day, but I am considering it. I am nervous this will come off as, okay, millennial vibes, like, oh, this is just generational differences, silly professor, there is nothing to worry about. What's the worst that could happen? Of course, every new technology transformed how the human species thinks, speaks, works, and so forth, for better or for worse. But as we all know, this one seems like a categorically different transition. And so I just had just a few things that I see in here that I think are important. They really got me thinking. The first one, the major one here, this is kind of an urgent one too. There is this significant technological transition. It urgently deserves careful thought. I was just in a meeting actually with my dean, and I brought this up, that students need to learn about AI. And afterwards, we started having a conversation about it, and he started asking me, well, do you know how a calculator works? But do you use one? And of course, the answer is yes, I do use one, and no, I don't really know how it works. And to him, it was interesting, and I think it is for me too. Just this idea that we need to understand how AI works, not just how it functions, behind the computer screen, and not necessarily just how to use it, not how to prompt it necessarily, because that's important. It's going to be important, of course, but also how it actually works, what makes it tick. And as this is kind of a categorically, I would argue with the calculator, it's a bit of a different thing. I know that there was a panic with calculators that may be just a little bit beyond my expertise, but I remember in school, if there was a calculator involved, we still had to show our work and stuff. We had to show that we understood the math. And with AI, we're still learning, how do we get the students to show their work? And is it the same, if we have them document the way that they did their work with AI, as it would be to show your work with the calculator? I think there probably are some ways to get students to show their work, to show that they're learning. But this is something that we need to work out. It does deserve some very careful thought right now. It's urgent, the semester's starting, and something that we need to be thinking about, because what's at stake, like Axel says here in this post, is student learning. And that's what we're here for. That's what students are there for. We want to make sure that that happens. And so it's kind of core to our mission, which is important. Another thing that I thought was really important in Axel's post was moving beyond assignment proofing to student reflection. He wanted to go in the direction of student reflection. It's not, how do we make our assignments so that they can't be done with AI, but rather how do we get students to start thinking about it instead? And so that I found to be really important as well. It's important to understand the tools that we're using, in my case, in the case of writing teachers with writing, also important for other folks, I'm sure. Getting past generational differences so students don't feel talked at, I think that's important as well. It's very easy for different generations to misunderstand each other a little bit. I think a lot of professors these days, if not almost all of us, did not grow up with any AI. Probably all of us still probably did not grow up with any AI if we're teaching in a college classroom at this point. The folks who have experienced high school with AI are probably still working on their college degrees, and then eventually their advanced degrees. They will eventually end up in the classroom with us. But for right now, maybe professors, I don't see how a professor right now could have grown up with AI in any way. But so it's very different. We don't want them to feel talked at. And that opens up learning as well. If we can find ways to do this that shows that their perspective is taken into account and they have an opportunity to talk about it, that also is going to be really important. It can open up the doors to learning. It can open up the doors to a good experience for them as well. So lots of really important things just in this one post. And that kind of motivated me to do this lesson plan, or this episode. And what I wanted to do is develop a lesson plan that helps me start the semester to kick off, talking about AI. It invites students to think critically about AI in the context of my class and their learning. It engages them without talking at them, and it begins a conversation that we can build on through the semester. I think it would be important to introduce it at the beginning of the semester and start talking about it, but then sometimes in more detail, sometimes in less. Maybe sometimes it's 5 minutes, maybe sometimes it deserves a full lesson plan here and there during the semester, but just an opportunity for students and instructors alike to think about AI and have a conversation about it and understand more how it works, I think is really important. And so lesson planning, review, launch, deliver, apply, close, once again, review from class material or students' experiences, launch, a bridge from the review to the main content, deliver, provide new knowledge, a short lecture, instructions, etc. Apply, students' opportunity to engage with the new knowledge, and close, reflect on what has been learned. And once again, thanks to my dean, Dr. Sherman Elliott, who, I think I said this in a previous episode, holds workshops. And when I got to GCU and I had a workshop where he went over this, it really was a game changer for my teaching, because it gave me a way to help students follow along, and it gave me a way to make sure I was always presenting things clearly to them, and it's worked out really well. It helps me a lot. And so that's what I'm going to do here, is I'm going to use this pattern: review, launch, deliver, apply, close. And also just some things to think about in this conversation about AI as we go along too. genAI in the news, there are different things that we could do here. It could be how it's playing out in professional settings, because there will be things in the news. Ethical ramifications in students' anticipated majors or professions. Realistic affordances and limitations of genAI, kind of having conversations about that. What can it do? What can it not do? The effects of genAI on learning and the potential and the pitfalls. I do try in my classes to be kind of transparent about the teaching that I'm doing and why I'm doing things that I'm doing, why I'm asking students to do certain things. I try to be transparent about the teaching of it, of teaching writing, and so that they, don't just feel like it's busy work. And this kind of goes along with that, the effects of genAI on learning. Scenarios, like what would you do if? You can respond to real or plausible hypothetical scenarios in which AI plays a role. How genAI actually works. It's a stochastic parrot, which I got from a book called The AI Con, if I remember right. AI Con as in conspiracy. But stochastic parrot, that's, it mimics things, and it does it informed by statistics and statistical models. Can genAI actually think? What is intelligence? What is the projected need for data centers in the next 10 years and so on? How long are they going to be building them, and all of that? Reinforcement learning from human feedback, and so on and so forth. So there are lots of different things here that could continue that conversation about AI. That reinforcement learning from human feedback one, that is, one thing that genAI models do is there are people behind them that are, for lack of a better term, they're trying to break them in certain ways, trying to get them to do certain things to see if they will or they won't, make really wild claims or hallucinate or things like that. That's my understanding of it, that there are people doing that kind of work, and so that's that reinforcement learning. So the AI is getting feedback from humans. That's what that means. But just different ways in which, help us understand how AI works. And I just realized that I actually skipped the lesson plan that I was going to include. I was going to do it back here with review, launch, deliver, apply, close. So I apologize for that. But let me go find that and we'll get started. All right, here it is. I apologize for that. I wrote the episode about a week ago, and I forgot to go review it before I sat down to record it. I should have gone through it again just to remind myself what I was doing. I meant to give you this before I gave you all the other ways to think about AI. But what I have here on the screen is a PowerPoint that I would take in with students on the first day of class. I'm planning on using this on the first day of class. And so it's to introduce them to my course policy regarding AI use. It's going to be how I convey to them the expectations and parameters around use of AI in the classroom and what to prioritize and so on. So it starts out, I just have a slide, with the course number on it, and then a brief question, a review question to get them started with writing and AI. So that's the title of this slide, writing and AI. Then I have some questions for them. It looks like this is the outline of what I'm going to do. So first I'm going to ask them what writing is. Then I'm going to ask them, is using AI to produce text a form of writing? And then I'm going to present to them my policy. And then how does Dr. Skeen's AI policy work? I've got a little bit of work for them to do there. That's something that they can apply, and then some takeaways. And so here I'm following that review, launch, deliver, apply, close format. And so here's what it would look like. If we start with this first part, I just give them a fast write. What is writing? It's a really great thing to ask in any writing course, I think, just right at the beginning, first thing. What is writing? And just give them 5 minutes to write a brief description of what it is, how they would define it, so on and so forth. And then from there, I have what's called a believe it or doubt it. So the first one was a review. What is writing? Just give them a chance to tap into their prior knowledge about writing. And then the second thing, the launch part, which will be a bridge to further information, is just I've got a statement. It's a believe it or doubt it statement. It's a believe it or doubt it exercise that I like to do in class. I learned it. I'm sorry that I can't remember right now. I don't think it's Donald Murray. It's another author, I think, or another important composition scholar. And it's not Donald Murray. I don't think it's somebody else, and I know who it is, but I can't remember, so I'm sorry. But a believe it or doubt it, just what you do is you just put up a statement that's debatable. And then you have the class find reasons to believe that statement, reasons why, in this case, someone might think producing text with AI is a form of writing. And then doubt it, reasons why someone might think of producing text with AI is not a form of writing. And so what I would do here is give them this prompt and then maybe demonstrate for them, well, here's what one believe it might be. And maybe I'd come up with a believe it and write it on the board. And I would come up with a doubt it and write it on the board. And then I would ask them to come up with 3 more on each side. Here are some reasons to believe it. Here are some reasons to doubt it. I might just not remind them because they just barely met me, but they probably sometimes are uncomfortable with doing the believe it and the doubt it, and they might think that I'm just asking for their believe it's, or I want their opinion, or I'm just asking for their doubt it's. But what I really want is for them to look at it from both sides. And so they don't have to express their opinion here. It's just, why would someone think it is a form of writing, and why would someone think using AI is not a form of writing? And so we would do this believe it or doubt it. And then next would be my genAI policy. And I need to finish this. I've got a drafted version of my genAI policy for use in my classroom, and I want to make sure that it fits within the framework at my university. And we actually just got a new framework today, so I want to make sure that I want to make sure mine aligns with the universities. And so I will give that to them. Or I could also, if your university has one, if you were to do this, you could give them the university one and say, we're going to work within these parameters. And I really think that mine, to an extent, is probably the one that I came up with is, it seems, it aligns with the university one, but I just want to make sure. So I don't have it for this podcast episode right now. But what I would do is go over that with them. I'd probably give them a screenshot of it. I'd give them a couple of reasons. At this point, I'm just delivering. I've done review. I've done launch. Now I'm delivering. Here are some reasons for Dr. Skeen's genAI policy, and I've got 2 of them. One is I would like to show them some research from a Screen Deep podcast with guest Dr. Naomi Barron. She presented some stuff about brain imaging and other evidence related to cognitive offloading that shows that when folks use AI to do things, it's a different outcome. You can see it in brains, in EEGs. You can see the difference in the brain activity with AI, in terms of engagement. Also, I have a brief story about a conversation with my friend who is a computer programmer. I had one with him over the summer. I think I might have mentioned it on the podcast. So he's being asked to use AI a lot, but he still needs to know what results he wants, and he needs to know how to achieve those results on his own, with coding, to be able to use AI tools effectively. And so I would share that story as well. And so one has to do with learning, one has to do with what they might face in the future. And so those are some reasons I would share with them for the policy. And I'd give a screenshot of the policy itself so that I could read it along with the class. I've got to try to make sure that it fits on something that I can bring into them, just so that they can follow along. It makes everything clear. So that's what this slide is reserved for. And so after that presentation, it's time to do some collaborative work, and I would give them a chance to work together on this a little bit. And the question is, what falls within my policy and what falls outside of it? And so they've got some scenarios there, but I'm not going to provide the scenarios. I'm going to have them develop the scenarios. And so what I have here are some instructions. Each person will write a 50-word scenario describing the use of genAI to produce text for an assignment. At least one person's scenario should clearly violate Dr. Skeen's policy. Oh, I see I have a typo there. At least one should fall squarely within Dr. Skeen's policy, and at least 2 should fall in gray area. Maybe it fits Dr. Skeen's policy and maybe it doesn't. And what I do is I like to establish groups of 4 most of the time at the beginning of the semester, with students. And so this is a way to do that, get them going on something together, and they'll do a little bit of writing together. And so after those instructions, I give them a chance to choose the people within their group. I'd probably have to go around the room and assign group numbers and things. And then the following here: which one person will write the scenario that clearly violates Dr. Skeen's policy? Which one person will write the scenario that falls squarely within Dr. Skeen's policy? Which 2 people write the one that may or may not conform to Dr. Skeen's policy? So we've got some gray area. And those are always the fun ones, the gray area. So that's why I included that, because it helps us learn about the parameters a little bit better. If you have more than 4 people in your group, which could happen depending on my classroom, decide whether they should write another clearly violates or falls squarely scenario, so that we get a little bit of other coverage too. But the idea on this slide is just that within their group, they get to choose who does what, so there's no confusion and they can get started. And then there's some individual writing time for the scenarios. And once again, I've got the options up there so that they can remember that somebody's going to write they're all going to write 50-word scenarios, and they've got these different parameters for the scenarios. And I'll probably also try to put my screenshot of my policy on there, maybe larger on the next slide. They'll want to see that, I think, probably primarily, because that's what they're working from, is my AI policy. And so I'll make sure to supply that for them. And then we'll have some class discussion. So what we're in, with the writing of these scenarios and with the class discussion, we're kind of in an apply mode here. Who will share their clearly violate scenario? How does it violate the policy? Who will share their falls squarely within scenario? How does it conform to that policy? Who will share their gray area scenario? What makes the scenario complicated? And so the idea there is, once again, we just kind of get to share and talk about this as an introduction to the AI policy. And then at the end, reflection. So we've done review, launch, deliver, apply. Now it's time to close. It's time to reflect. What is your biggest takeaway about genAI right now? Just one sentence. And that would close out this particular lesson. And the whole lesson, I think, would take probably about 30 minutes or so. And I would try to make sure that it stays within those parameters, because I'll probably have other things on the first day that we'll want to talk about as well. But we'll also want to talk about writing. We'll want to, get to know each other a little bit. I have students do name tags. We'll be doing that too. And so I will try to limit this to about 30 minutes. So that's the lesson plan. And, once again, I'll be able to follow up all semester with that list that I shared with you before I gave the lesson plan, which I didn't mean to do. But once again, the list is, I can bring in stuff from genAI in the news. We could talk about ethical ramifications in their anticipated majors or professions, to get them thinking about the future. Realistic affordances and limitations of genAI. What can it do for you? What can it not do for you? And then I might bring in something like the example that I brought in to the podcast within the last few weeks about trying to get AI to use the rhetorical tool of presence. I could bring that in as an example, and we could experiment with that, and then talk about what the limitations might be, or the affordances. The effects of genAI on learning, I can bring that in. I can bring research in. What would you do if? And then some scenarios, how genAI actually works, what are the nuts and bolts of it, and even a little bit more philosophically, what does it mean to think or to reason, or what is intelligence? Those things could be really useful too, because we do, make assumptions based on what we call things. We do sometimes make assumptions, and we could talk about those. And then the reinforcement learning from human feedback. I apologize, I see another typo there as well. So I should have run this through ChatGPT just to check for typos. But that's what I have this time around. I really appreciate having you here. Oh, one more thing that I could say before I sign off for now is that just making it feasible in your classroom. I think I said this earlier, but reflection can sometimes be 5 minutes. Sometimes it can be 30 minutes, somewhere in between this thinking and talking about AI. I think it's really good to approach this subject from several angles, just like anything else. It's always good to practice things, to review things, to approach things from several angles. It just helps with students and their learning. Making connections to the context of your course content also, I think, is important. Being transparent is key. And I think this would help me begin that journey with students alongside all of the other things that we're doing. And so thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this podcast. It is pushing me forward in terms of my teaching, and it's kind of holding me responsible. It's holding me accountable for some of the improvements I'd like to make myself. And so I really get to think through that, and I really appreciate you listening. My socials: email teachingwritingincollege@gmail.com, Facebook Teaching Writing in College, Bluesky @teachingwriting.bsky.social, YouTube @teachingwritingincollege, mastodon.social /@teachingwritingincollege. And so thank you again, and I will talk to you next time. Until then, take care, and I hope if your semester is getting started that you have a great one. I'll see you later.